Michael is the author of a program called Resiliency for Life. It teaches you about how to handle stress, how to deal with stress in your life, and any other trauma that you may come across in your life, either at home, at work, or in any other situation. Michael Ballard.
Thank you. Well, good evening. I'm Michael Ballard, as he said, and I want to talk to you about resiliency, which, as Terry alluded to, has got a lot to do with stress. But resiliency also is about going further than that, past that. So tonight's program, we're going to get you to consider what is resiliency and our ability to bounce back from life's everyday moment-to-moment events, overwhelming hurdles and obstacles. Now, here's what makes it different, is resiliency can help us at a personal level and a family level, corporate level, team level, community level, and I'd say country level. So in the past year, I got chosen by the government of Singapore for my resiliency model. As they said, I had a powerful model because it was simple to use. So the thing about resiliency is it's nice to know it, but if you don't use it, it's a waste. So as we go through this tonight, I want you to ask yourself, how much of this do you already know? But then how much of this do you actually do? Because to know and not to do is cause yourself personal distress. And also, the other thing about resiliency is you can ask yourself, it's also about personal culture that you create in your work environment, your family environment, but also in the workplace, the work environment, the work culture that takes place where you work. So, what does it matter? Positive personal impact, family, career benefits, organizational benefits. Interestingly enough, Harvard Medical School has been doing some research, and they call it stress hardy. And in stress hardiness, they're saying that people who practice those skills have up to 20% less incidence of chronic or acute illness issues, and cost up to 30% less for their medical system. So that's an amazing benefit. A sales team that was given resiliency training, because the other thing about resiliency is about persistence. Resilient people, to them, no just means later, except in dating. So positive organizational benefits, impacts creativity, problem-solving skills, and I haven't seen the research yet, but I personally believe that it cuts down on the cycle times to get things done. Because resilient people like to get it done, make it happen. If you could, Terry, thank you. So it's not a test tonight, but I want you to consider how would you use it personally, family, and organizationally when you leave this place. And I've got a couple of case studies from Harvard. We'll give you the reprint numbers if you're interested in tracking them down.
Can I just throw something in here? How many people recognize that? That's the test pattern from the 50s, and that's what used to be on televisions before you got a picture.
So in the morning when you turned on the TV early, that was what was there. So, if you could.
Yep.
Thank you. So if you could show us the model. And what I've done is I've taken, I don't know, there's 3,000 pieces of research on resiliency. So how do you distill it down so that somebody on your plant floor with a grade 9 mentality and a grade 10 education, or a grade 12 education and a grade 12 mentality, which isn't a bad thing. I come from a blue-collar home, as my dad would say, meat and potatoes is a good thing, as opposed to highfalutin thinking. How do you use it? So my belief system and the research bears out that vision and values that we have on ourselves become our thoughts and feelings, which become our behavior and attitudes. So resiliency, to a point, is asking you to look inside yourself and say, so what do you believe, what do you hold to be true about you? What do you hold to be true about you? Who have you allowed to define you? That you said, yeah, that's me. And yet, how much of that is the truth? And how much of that is a lie? Anybody ever have you tell you something in the first 16 years of your life that turned out when you became an adult to be wrong? Yeah, there's a few hands go up. Well, some of us don't self-examine for a long time. So being resilient means you do all you can to know the truth about you. What are your traits? We've got at least one person in the room that works in numbers, and I went, good for you, because you know, when it gets down to $10 and less, I could care less about balancing the books or doing my taxes. So if I ever get audited, I might owe a lot of $9 for years back. On the other hand, the big picture is taken care of. So resilience, the resiliency model we have here, self-leadership. What makes me different than the psychologists is I've changed the language. They like to use psychology language, which is great if you're a psychologist talking to psychologists. But again, I've tried to drive the model to the 70 to 80% that don't have a lot of or any post-secondary education, because that's the workforce that needs to absorb it. So Second piece, vision, values, and purpose. We know that if people have a sense of vision and a sense of values, it helps them drive their life with a sense of purpose. And if they have that, life's a little more meaningful. They're an awful lot nicer to deal with. Relationship currency. What are your interpersonal skills like? You've heard of emotional intelligence? Yes, no? Well, resiliency and emotional intelligence, depending on which expert you talk to, have an overlap in skill set or are side by side. I'm not going to argue with the researchers. There's so many of them. But the one thing I know to be true that is highly resilient people have good relationship currency skills. They know how to connect with others to get things done. They know how to advocate for themselves. They know how to advocate for others. And whether that's problem solving in the workplace or problem solving in the family, they know how to push it. Terry, if you could. The fourth part of the model is energy management. And that one's a little different than the professionals advocate. But anybody ever feel great by Friday? Full of life? Or is that because it's Friday? Okay. Energy management is about our ability to manage our energy in the course of a workday, in the course of a weekend, in the course of a high impact event in our life. I got very interested in energy management because at one point I had a lot of health issues, and I'm lying on a hospital bed going, I'm so weak I can't get out of bed. This is no good. When I get healthy, when I get out of here, I'm going to have to learn a little more about what makes this thing tick and manage the resources better. So energy management, which we'll get into a little more detail later, is about how do you manage your physical, your emotional, your intellectual energy for long-term success. Because if we watch the news too much and get too involved, there's nothing left. So, thank you. And, oh, one too many. Accelerated learning skills is something that in the corporate world I think we need to pay attention to, because in the 80s, things changed quick, but what? You went from an electric typewriter to an electric typewriter that just had a little more memory in it. But suddenly, the late 80s and DOS came along, or Windows came along, and now I've got people saying, I have 3-inch manuals I have to learn every 90 days to 180 days. And then I got to forget what I learned from 3 years ago. It's obsolete. It's no longer relevant. So I'm starting to see what I call learning fatigue, where people tell me, I don't want to anymore. And yet, that's how we keep our careers secure, our organization secure, helps keep us competitive. I met with a union that said their biggest problem was getting their members under 40 to take more education. Tired of night school, man. Fed up with it. It was like, makes for an interesting future if we all don't stay in school, because you can't keep running off what you learned 6 years ago. So accelerated learning skills to me in the workplace are important to look at from a resiliency point of view. It's like, how do you do just-in-time learning where you learn what you need to complete the job effectively and efficiently, but not bogged down taking so much school you don't have a personal life? So accelerated learning skills. So that's the basic model. Now, most of you have the handout here, but my visual model says that if something happens to us where the two lines intersect, on the left, things go good, we stretch, we accept, we keep moving. Things go bad, to the right, we feel threatened, there's a loss. So, what to consider? To be resilient means we have to understand and be aware of where we are at. It's okay to be on either side of this. Short term, it doesn't matter where you are. To go to the right, feel helpless and hopeless, means we're feeling a loss, meaning we're being less resilient at that moment. So for an hour, a week, a minute, a day, you visit being less resilient. Highly resilient people, long-term, realize that they're being less resilient. So their world is shrinking. They're not seeing themselves as having any sense of power. They're not showing any strong self-leadership skills, because whatever it was that did it has really knocked them over. To be more resilient, though, on the left side, is we have to have a sense of acceptance. I don't have to like what's going on right now. However, having said that, though I don't like it, what do I need to learn? Who do I need to talk to? What actions do I have to take to master it? So to stay highly resilient, we have to look at our sense of acceptance and mastery over life's events as they happen to us. And to go back to Viktor Frankl's book from the 40s, Man's Search for Meaning, he basically said there's two states we can be in when confronted with an issue of any size. We can shrink, we can stretch. So resiliency is about how can you intellectually, emotionally, not so much physically, stretch and match and build and grow your capacity to deal with whatever the issue is. So do you see how this works in the workplace as well? You've got one department there, every time there's an obstacle or a challenge, we don't have the equipment to do that. Oh, you don't understand, we're behind, and the list goes on. Same set of circumstances, different department head, different set of morale, different workplace culture on the left side. Well, we're really tight for time these days and short of resources. When do you need it? Not sure how we're going to do it. Let's have a meeting and bring in the teams and see how we can make it happen to be successful. So nobody's wrong, but I would suggest that to be very resilient is having an attitude or creating a culture in the workplace or in the family of how can we deal with this in the safest, fastest, healthiest, most productive manner. So if you could, Terry, please. To move us through this, we've got to consider why resiliency. As you develop and deepen their resiliency, the following things can start to happen. Benefits start to occur, which include, if you could, problem-solving skills, and we shorten our cycle times. So if there's something bad happens, we get over it faster. And we've got an extra bullet because what do you think can happen? This is the interactive part. So if people become more resilient, creativity goes up because they have that sense of ownership, that sense of mastery, that sense of control. So in some ways, that model that's the giant T, there's loss of resiliency, loss of ownership, loss of control, helpless and hopeless, the two H's. Heaven forbid when you get them in the workplace or in the personal life. But over here, there's a sense of mastery and acceptance. And if we have a sense of mastery and acceptance, then what we're getting is a sense of control, a sense of ownership. So in the workplace, that has a lot to do with the type of staff we hire and how we choose to interact with them and what's the language you use. So the language of resiliency is all about what's our next step, how are we going to get there. We acknowledge the obstacles. I would say that highly resilient people are a little bit optimistic and a whole lot realistic. So they're not really high-level optimists. That's just going to lead to failure because that's everything's all sunny side up all the time. But they're not pessimists. They're just leaning into the being optimist, but really realistic. They know what the score is, but they're going to move it forward and push that snowball up the hill even though it's July and make margaritas along the way. So if you could, Terry.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what is it, to go back? Resiliency impacts our rational, emotional, physical, family, social, organizational, and community health. I've been doing some volunteer work with United Way, and it's amazing to talk to the different organizations and the NGOs and that as they show up at the meetings, and how some organizations with a small budget and very few staff go, you know, in our neighborhood, we got these issues. But you know, we've helped resolve these 3. We're working on 9. We sure would like double the budget and triple the staff, but we're doing it. And others, highly resilient from my point of view, other organizations go, it just never ends. And you go, uh-oh, see some burnout happening here. Nice people, good intentions, but they're feeling overwhelmed. So, Terry, if you could. It's a methodology and a set of skills and measurement, because you can measure resiliency in individuals and teams and thereby communities or organizations, that assist people to move forward despite what happens to them. So to me, in the corporate world, as we face more skill and staff shortages, and does anybody here have an office in the West? I was out in Alberta in December and January and February, and one of my clients said, you know, our hiring policies have changed so many times in 18 months that the joke is now, one good eye, one good leg, you're still drawing breath, you're hired, what can you do? I had a gentleman who was supposed to have 27 staff, he has 27 temps. He's laminated maps of the building so that people don't get lost, because they said most of them never stay long enough to know where everything is. It's a large campus. So he said, you do what you can. Getting lost was a waste of time, so it cost a little money, but I laminated maps of the building. Laminated maps of the parking lot so people could find their way. So he's being resilient the only way he knows how, and it's a good place to start. If you could, Terry. So types of resiliency. Inner and outer. It's real basic, but there's your intrapersonal skills to be resilient, and then your interpersonal skills.
We just did locus of control, so they can relate a bit to that.
Good. So depending on the individual, some of them find the interpersonal easy and the intrapersonal tough. Some find the intrapersonal easy and the interpersonal tough. It's a personal issue. And the other thing to consider is have you studied multiple intelligence at any point in your career? Depending on your multiple intelligence profile, which I really urge you to look at, it's on the web, Howard Gardner. He doesn't know it, but he's one of my heroes. He looks at the fact that we all have 10 different ways possibly that we're smart. And nobody can be 100 in all of them. You take the 10 and we profile. Some people get 99 in one, 1 in another, and 0s in the rest. So they're very high in one area and low in the rest.
So if they Google multiple intelligence, they'll get it?
Yes.
Good.
So Howard Gardner, he's got some interesting things he does. So how do you get resilient? It's a process that starts with awareness. Highly resilient people, highly resilient organizations are highly aware. What's going on? Why is it going on? Can we find a cause? What's the impact? At one point, I worked for an organization that had more computer power and processing power except for the Pentagon per 1,000 employees. Boy, they had a computer room back in the day of punch cards that was huge. And being old enough that I came out of college when punch cards were still being taught, yikes. My daughters would tell you that was just after dirt was invented before dinosaurs roamed the earth. But, you know, it's what 25-year-olds and less say.
Hey, be careful.
What's that?
I used cards.
I use cards too, yeah. Well, we won't talk about it now. But even though they were highly aware that computer processing power made a huge difference to their business and industry, when desktops came along, they didn't see how desktop publishing would kick them in the shins and topple them. So in 1988, biggest in the world, one major competitor in North America that nibbled, and they fought back and forth, but there was $500 million plus in difference in size. Fast forward 3 years, 3 small competitors combined did more business than them, all done on desktop publishing. They just came, quote unquote, out of nowhere. Well, by then I didn't work for them anymore. But their lack of awareness that the small little computers would impact mainframes, they just didn't see it coming. Before I left, I owned a little desktop. They were like, why'd you buy one of those? I said, I can do memos and send them back out the same day at the end of the workday, because time is a competitive element. Nobody's in that much hurry. Fast forward with email, where people 20 minutes later want a response from you. It seems like, wow, careful what you wish for. Back then in the 80s, I thought being 24-hour turnaround time, I was proficient. Now it's like, leave me alone. It hasn't been 20 minutes. Times change. So high levels of awareness. Skill building. What do you need to know to accomplish this? What do you need to do to use it? Who can help you use it? Practice. Lifelong learning. Being trained and coached. Balance in life and work. And I'm going to go back to trained and coached for a minute. One of the biggest obstacles I see for personal and career development, and one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the corporate world, and I know I'm in the training industry, I'm biased, is the fact that we don't give our staff enough training in what I call the soft skills. There's an organization out of the US that's gone around the world with 80 offices, and their frontline staff get a one-day problem-solving course once you just get past the 90 days. Once you're in and you're a permanent employee, off you go. Take the one-day course. Stay for 2 years, off you go. Take the 2-day course. Stay for 4, off you go. Get the very expensive 3.5-day problem-solving course. Because frontline staff's job is to solve problems so that upper management can focus on other things. Because you have that authority and you have those rights, roles, responsibilities, and spelled out. You're responsible this much up to this dollar amount. Up to that amount, just solve it. We trust your judgment. It's very refreshing. That's one company out of 1,000 where more than 1% of the staff have had problem-solving courses, which just makes me wonder, because most days, what do we all do? Solve problems. So, and then last and not least, to be resilient is balance in work and life. If you could, thank you. So, to go back and blow these up a little bit, self-leadership. Again, I don't use the psychological terms when I work with staff because typically a lot of those intimidate people. So I don't talk about self-esteem and self-confidence right up front with staff because men don't have self-confidence problems. We drink too much, we get into fights, we have extramarital affairs, we spend our money at the racetrack, but we don't have any confidence problems. Got it? But self-leadership, oh, good baseball player, leads the team to victory, self-leadership. Olympic athlete wins for the team, self-leadership. So I'm not saying I cheat or trick people, but I do relabel things to make it easier. I've reframed a lot of words so that people just go, yeah, okay, I could have more self-leadership skills. Because I'll talk about in sales, people with high self-leadership skills in sales earn more. So my model for self-leadership is, again, awareness. And some of you have the handout, and if you don't have it, I'll get you copies. But there's 6 levels of awareness as I understand it. And the first level of awareness is you don't know, you don't know. So if you don't know, you don't know, it's really hard to change because you're constantly getting blindsided in life by what you don't know. The second level of awareness is you know you don't know. And every time you turn around, it really hurts. You know you should be able to conquer this, but you can't get past it. So if we're going to be highly resilient, we have to know what are we really good at and what do we need to learn? What's getting in our way? What trips us up? So that takes us to level 3 in awareness that we know, and we're learning. Yeah, it slows us down a little bit as we absorb something new, but do we get upset by slowing down or we get excited because this is one more thing off the list that I can master? Ultimately, if we're going to be highly resilient, it'd be nice to get into what level 4 is, which is unconscious competence. You just do it. It's a habit now. You don't know how you do it necessarily, you just do it. You're a lean, keen production machine. And so that can help us because now we've mastered that piece, whatever that was. That's for you. However, in family or corporate, we usually have to pass along. Cross-training, parenting, whatever it is. And that's where level 5 comes in. You know, but you've actually learned the labels so that you can pass the skill along. So I think it's very important that if we're going to be resilient as individuals or resilient as an organization or as a family or a community, we have to take a look at what are the steps, what's the process, and how do we help each other out. So as I teased and joked with the accounting professional in the room, good thing you do the numbers because it wouldn't work for me. You'd be audited every year because at the $10 range, nothing ever balanced. On the other hand, though, I could help with the sales piece because that's interesting and exciting for me. And I like out there getting rejection because not everybody does, because every time I get a rejection, I'm that much closer to getting you more business. Seems a little perverse, but that's just what turns my crank on, being competitive. So take a look at your sense of awareness. And last and not least, corporately or personally, 6th level of awareness is you think you know you know. You ever been a volunteer with an organization that all of a sudden things just imploded? Ever worked for a company that one day you went to work and there was a closed sign? Or the sheriff was there and they'd gone bankrupt? I started a project, and on the 3rd day of the project, I got there and Revenue Canada, Customs and Excise, and Health and Safety had seized the warehouse and locked it off. And I found out later that the owner just kept strolling through life and not filing papers with any of those agencies, thinking that, it's just a couple of million, what's the big deal? Well, government wants you to pay attention to the details. And he really thought that he'd be able to talk his way out of it. And he lost the business out of that deal. So the 6th level awareness is the one that's dangerous, that for 3 or 4 years in our life, things are good, so we stop learning, we stop paying attention. So highly resilient people know that there's always 1 more or 2 more things to learn. Doesn't mean they're out there doing it all the time. They just know it's on the list to get to. Or if they can't get to it, they know somebody who has, and they can pick up the phone. Not to take advantage of, just that we trade information. Because who's got time to learn it all? Nobody. So that's awareness. Security. I alluded to it earlier. How have you allowed life to define you? Our parents, our country, our heritage, our culture, our values, belief systems. But then there's that teacher a long time ago that said, wow, you're exceptional at it. So for the rest of your life, you got a little strut because I'm exceptional. Or maybe it was the reverse, which according to Dr. Helmstetter, it happens 80 out of 100 conversations are done in the negative. You got told you weren't as good as. And you carry that around all your life with a little bit of wounded going. I taught job search for 8 years, how to sell yourself to people. And it was amazing to have people come in and say, oh man, there's no work out there for me. And I know it's really easy to get discouraged and be in that valley of despair. But resilient people go, what am I projecting? Resilient companies go, how am I projecting? The marketplace has beat us up. What will we do? And I can think of one man who said, just 6 months ago in my review, I got told I was the best technician they had in Canada. Most productive, highest quality, lowest waste, least rejected units. And now we've outsourced. I'm gone. I didn't even get a chance to work for the company that they've outsourced to. So he was feeling really beat up. Fast forward, we spent 12 days in workshops together. And he, I'm kind of mad now, but it's a good mad. I'm going to go out and make more money. I'm going to tell people how good I was in a humble way, not a modest way. I call it the modesty trap. One has to be cautious if you're being resilient because modesty gets in the way. You only tell them half of what you're good at. Humble people can tell everybody what they're good at, all of it, but they just do it gently. So humble people can tell people what they do and what they're good at gently without having a strut. Modest people only tell people half of what they're good at, and they do it so badly that they don't figure you're worth anything. So at a personal level, resilient people stay humble, but they tell the truth about themselves. Modest people tell half the truth and don't think they're very valuable. That's how I define it. So beware of the modesty trap. So sense of security. So if there was a picture of you in your personal dictionary that only you could see, the words that you've put there? What are the words you've allowed others to put there? Because to be truly resilient is to be honest with yourself. Because I would suggest some of those things should be thrown away, and some of those things you should blow up a little, make the font a little bigger, because it's really you. So a long time ago, a teacher with good intent told me, you're no good at that. You don't take math next year. Well, in my house, there's no such thing as you're no good at. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to try to do better? So luckily, I had a neighbor who was a math teacher who said, Michael, so algebra and calculus aren't you. Fair enough. You plan on building bridges for a living, be an architect? Good thing. However, you got some good business math skills. I've seen you as a kid with the paper route in the hardware store. You got some good stand on your feet business skills at the hardware store. When people come in to buy cement, you can talk square footage and cubic yards real fast. You help people figure out how many square feet of glass they need for broken window panes when they repair their windows. We need more business people that can do that. So you're not good at this piece, but you're good at this piece. So resilient people don't let people whitewash them and tell them they're no good. This piece you might not work as fast as you like or be exceptional at. So I'll never be a mathematical genius teaching calculus or learning it, but I've got good business math skills and had a 10-year career where even though I'm not an accounting fan, because I'd taken accounting in my university college courses, I got more business for the company because I could do it better than my competition. Who knew? I wanted to look up the old grade 10 math teacher, and say, watch what comes out of your mouth, buddy. You didn't know what you were talking about. So resilient people, resilient organizations, put themselves under the microscope and say, how we've chosen to allow ourselves and others to define ourselves, is that true? Yes? No. And some of it's always true, and some of it's always wrong, and some of it's a half-truth. So resilient people are politely honest with themselves, but they know the truth. They pay attention to it. So that helps build a sense of security. So are you a lean, keen numbers machine? Because I was a lean, keen sales machine for years, and I got to capture clients that for 30 years were uncapturable for the company. It was a lot of fun. I took it personal that they would switch over. They didn't know that the first day I said, hi, I work for ABC Corp. We'd like your business. Oh, no, go away. No, we're real happy. And I'm thinking, that's good. I like a happy customer with the competition because when we get them, they'll be happy too and happier. So resiliency at a personal level drives you forward towards victory, but at a corporate level also drives you. So security, sense of direction. I really need you to take a look at your sense of direction to be resilient. just for the show of hands, how many have taken goal-setting courses? Okay, a few. Those of us with business and sales backgrounds, every 2 years they sent you off for another goal-setting course because, you know, it's the lifeblood of the company to have good goals. Well, true, but I'd say that resilient people have some unique goals set that others might not have at all. So if goal setting in traditional ways are all about dates, times, places, numbers, good to do, don't stop. But I would suggest resilient people also have some other goals, which I would call soft goals. How do you want to feel every day? Who do you want to connect with every day? What do you want to connect with every day? So on the managing negativity, I'm on a media diet. I know we have a newspaper editor in here, or reformed, but I only read and watch so much media in a day because I can't change most of what's out there, so I want to stay highly informed, but I don't want to watch it 3 times. That's the managing how much I'm bringing in. But on the positive side, what do you want to read? What do you want to watch? With who? Who do you want to go and have a coffee with, a tea with? Who do you want to bring around you that nurtures and guides you? And we'll get into that later. But resilient people surround themselves with people that'll tell them the polite truth. Gently and firmly they go, hey, I think you're going in the wrong direction. So take a look at your sense of direction. The traditional goal setting, valuable, got to do it. And the soft goal setting, how do you want to feel? What are you going to do that? I've done work with acute and chronic illness patients, and they always go, it's so, fill in the blank, a drag, painful, not fun. And I say, that's true, but look in the mirror. There's the reason you're not having any fun. We have to take our own responsibility to have fun in life and be joyful. So be careful. To be resilient, we have to take some responsibility for what's our mood. What do we want to do about it? If it's a depression, then we see medical professionals. If it's just a funk, because the job's a bore, the boss is worse, the traffic's a killer. Should have brought I could have rollerbladed here, I think, a little faster tonight.
It's bad.
It's up to me to take responsibility for that and then change it. So I listened to some tunes, phoned a good friend I haven't talked to in 90 days, thank heavens for a long-distance calling plan, and use those dollars. So sense of direction. Where's yours? What do you want to do about it? Now, I'm speaking to the converted. You're in school. You had the time. You took the time. You made the time to fit it into your life. Next piece, sense of mastery. We live in a culture that doesn't value mastery. You agree? So I define mastery as our ability to examine, audit what we don't have enough of, skills, what's the outcome I want, and what are the steps I'm going to take to get there so I'm good at it. So I have a friend that's taken up guitar late in life. So they first went out and looked around to see the difference between a 6-string and a 12-string. They quickly determined that if they're going to learn, a 12-string is probably just reaching a little too high. And then if they wanted to enjoy practicing, maybe it wasn't good to buy the cheap one in the store that, as he put it later, said looked like it was cardboard and varnish, because it didn't sound very good. He said, if I have to practice and not sound good because I don't play well is one thing, but if it's a bad sounding instrument, that's even worse. So they went for a mid-level, I think they paid about $300. So I don't know anything about guitars except they sound good when they're played well. So now they're going for lessons, but they've hired a teacher that's known to be playful. So yeah, you go for your hour, but they can make you laugh at your mistakes, and this person's performed all over North America, so they know all about stage and performance anxiety. So he said, I'm going to master that guitar to the point where my hope is, and my kids don't know this, that by the time they get to be 10, we can have sing-alongs. Just at the age where it isn't cool, but they said, we'll see what we can do about that. So mastery. George Leonard wrote a book years ago called Strictly Mastery. Again, you'll get a reading list after tonight, but I highly recommend you look at it. It's very small, less than 100 pages. It's the process of how do you master something, and very importantly in the book, he talks about what gets in the way of us mastering things. And I believe if we're going to grow our resiliency and deepen our personal resources to be resilient, we have to understand that sometimes things get in the way. And of course, one of the things that gets in the way is our whole culture out there is about instantaneous gratification. There's a cartoon about 2 days ago, and in the cartoon, these two office staff are talking to each other, and the one woman says to the other, "How you doing?" "Oh, got terrible insomnia." "Well, why are you so happy?" "Well, I stayed up last night and watched television all night. I didn't realize I could lose weight, get better abs, and all those things in just a few days if I buy all that product. Life's just getting better." So in a society that values instant gratification as opposed to doing truly hard work, it doesn't value resiliency, and resiliency is a process. And sometimes we've got deep wells and reserves of resiliency, and other times we have less than. It's just normal. It's recognizing it and acting accordingly to deepen them again. Because resiliency keeps us safer, helps us move ahead in our career, helps us with our family and our social life. It's got a lot of benefits. One of the other components of self-leadership is your sense of power. Now, the bottom, complete sense of powerlessness. Well, I don't think anybody'd be here in this room if you had complete sense of powerlessness. You'd be at home under the bed, not even on the bed, going, "Can't do it." Now, that's a starting point. But where do you get your power from and why? Is it your height? Is it your charm and good looks? We know where Terry gets his from. Is it your size? Is it your education? Is it your gender? Is it your education? Is it your expertise, formal or informal? So to really, at a corporate level, grow your resiliency, I'd ask you to examine, where do you get your expertise from? Where do you get your sense of power from? Because to be resilient, it's really important to know that where do you get your power from? I've been doing some job coaching with some people who are in career transition, sometimes because they want to be and sometimes because they got a pink slip. And I had a young lady who came to me because she wanted to leave her job. She said, "I just hate it. 150 phone calls a day, 40 different experts at work I'm supposed to coordinate the efforts of, but they don't like me and my boss has been fired and not replaced for 8 weeks. Enough's enough." But you know, I didn't do a lot for her, but we sat down and we did an audit, as I talked about, to be resilient, do a personal audit. And we took her through some issues on self-confidence and self-beliefs and mastery and what are you good at and what do you want to grow into. And you know what? 6 months later, she made $9,000 a year more. I didn't do much of that. She did 90% of the work. I just held up a mirror. Said, "You got to do it, not me." So from a career point of view, there was big payback for her because she was way under potential. So sense of power. To be resilient is to have your sense of power. I have a lady in my life that's been helping some seniors have a fight with a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And guess who lost? The multi-billion-dollar corporation. In the group of seniors, we have 2 people who survived World War II and lived the life of being bombed. Two seniors who lived through worse things than that in the Second World War. And then some younger seniors, some junior seniors at the 60 to 75 to 80-year-old range. And between a lot of them, there's a lot of feistiness. They're respectful, but there's a lot of feistiness, you know. And if you have a favorite auntie that's over 60 that you don't mess with, only she's lots of fun, we got lots of those. And a couple of gentlemen as well. And so we just wrote them. And so far, a multi-million-dollar contract got canceled. 2 key staff in 2 firms got released from duty because they weren't listening. Now, we don't normally get negative in our group, but when seniors get taken advantage of, we tend to lean in and help any way we can. So sense of power. Never underestimate your sense of power. And sometimes all you need to do is have somebody that you can talk to that'll show you where your power is. Sometimes we don't know what we got until somebody else says, "Hey, you got lots of power. It's not here, it's here." So to be resilient and to grow your resiliency is to understand where's your sense of power. Now I have to stop and do my commercial. And my commercial is, if you don't feel you have enough power based on your language skills, one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself and your career, and ultimately I believe your income, is look at Toastmasters. Toastmasters is a not-for-profit group with chapters all over the world dedicated to help us all be a little more eloquent and be more persuasive in our skills. 2 tracks, basic communication skills, leadership skills. I'm pleased to say now I've had 9 people join since I started talking about this in the last 3 years. No, I don't get a bonus if you join. I'd love an email if you join. But I just talked to a CMA last year who's now going through career transition, and she said, I took your advice. I joined Toastmasters. I've done my second speech. Wow, I can feel the confidence starting to course through my veins. So for her, Toastmasters has helped building up her sense of power about her ability to communicate. How many of you are in HR?
Can I just do a testimonial here before we do that? Yeah, they're all HR, basically.
Okay.
And I have to relate to this too, because when I was 10 years old, I was so shy I couldn't walk down the street and say hello to anybody. I was really a shy kid. And I got to high school and I realized that my life wasn't going anywhere. So I started meeting and talking to people who were more gregarious and developing this sense of power.
No, it's Michael Ballard, not Mr. Gregarious.
Okay, you changed your name. So it made a huge difference because that lack of self-confidence, that feeling that I couldn't talk to anybody was very difficult. And this is a good time to take a break.
So self-leadership. Before we went for break, we were talking about awareness, security, direction, mastery, sense of power. I used to get to work with a gentleman called Tom. And Tom was very good at helping people have a sense of power through recognition. He actually got banned from his corporate head office because so many people did him favors after hours without looking for money to get paid by the company that they felt it was an unfair advantage to the rest of the sales force. And yet, his power was in his commitment when he talked to you. When he talked to you, only you existed. He wasn't noticing the handsome guy or the beautiful woman. It was just you. So he got banned, along with his team, for coming into head office because people do too many favors for you. And he said, geez, I didn't know manners had gone out of style. Because he was really big on if somebody in the company did something for you, I know they get paid to do it, but say thank you. I know they get paid to do it, but if it's really big, write them a note. Don't type them a note, write them a note. So he had a real good sense of power because his interpersonal skills were supreme. And once a year, he had about a $200 budget. He was a department manager. One year he made up baseball hats with the company logo on the front. And he'd go around and do silly things like, but only if you'd earned it, by the power invested in me on behalf of our customers and my team, thank you. You made a big difference and helped score one for the team. He said, the first time I did it, I handed out about 20 hats and I got about 50 other phone calls. What about me? What about me? This guy's very resilient. His sales team led the nation for years as one of the top 3 teams out of 7 because he knew how to say thank you. And if you have 2 things to do at the end of the day after hours, who are you going to do them for? Him, who always says thank you and makes a big to-do out of it? Or the other one who goes, yeah, thanks, it was nice. It was fun to watch him do what he did. So he got a lot of power out of that by being respectful and playful. So again, re-examine your sense of power and all the different ways you can get it. Move forward to motivation. You know, the research out of New York, they do that research since the 40s every 5 years about the reasons why we work, what motivates us, and money keeps coming in second, third, fourth, fifth, anything but first. And people always go, it's not true. I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people have quit good paying jobs because they hated the company, the boss, the culture, and took less money where, I've just had a friend leave a high level executive position to go live in the country. And he commutes to work, only works 32 hours a week, contract.
Yeah.
But he said, it's so nice. No Sunday night phone calls, no Saturday afternoon phone calls. It's Monday to Friday. Who knew I could be this happy? So that's what works for him. So take a look at what truly motivates you. Because to be resilient, it's important that we pay attention to what motivates us and align our behavior with our values. And self-efficacy, how well do you advocate for you? One of the ladies that I did job search for last year, we identified 3 things that gets in her way for her career advancement and why she always seems to be, to me, gets hired 1 to 2 levels below her skill sets and capabilities. It certainly isn't her linguistic issues. She's quite high there, but she's got 3. She thought she had 1. I think she has 3. She's gone to talk to her dean. She's going to be a graduate of a post-degree program real soon. And I said, hey, pay attention, because this gets in your way. It's not fair. It is what it is. So she's advocating for herself. We're trying to get her 10 people that will help her with her job hunt, 10 people well positioned in the community. Why not? If you can do it, Leverage those friendships, leverage those contacts, I said. Maybe you can parachute in over the person that won't typically hire you. She said, I like how you think. So the ability to show strong leadership skills is we can look out for ourselves. We don't need others to do it for us, or we'll ask others to do it with us. Is very important. So that's some thoughts about self-leadership and resiliency. Any questions? Okay. Vision and values. One of the things about people that are highly resilient or highly resilient organizations and teams is they have clearly defined sets of rights, roles, and responsibilities. In the case study about resilient organizations, we have a CSR rep from United Parcel, right? UPS? Yes, we do. UPS is noted as a highly resilient organization, and a fine example because the example was during the hurricane, or just after the hurricane in Florida, I believe 100% of their parcels the next day were delivered. Period. Full stop. End of discussion. Nobody else did it. They said, but that comes on that, oh, there's a storm center where? What are we going to do? What temporary sites will we use if our buildings are out of service and commission? Always having a contingency plan. So it made UPS look very smart, very proactive. So having a clearly defined set of rights, roles, and responsibilities as an individual or as an organization helps you stay resilient. So what's your vision? I define a vision as something that's a motive. I define the mission as the hard numbers, the facts. So you're in what program to get what certificate? CHRP, right? So that's the mission. That's the hard. But the vision is increase your lifestyle because you make more when you're certified. Enjoy your job more because you have more knowledge. There's a whole. So I like to break them out. The mission to me is the hard facts, and the vision is the warm fuzzy. And I believe if we define our vision, and the research says if we define a vision, and we define our purpose as well, it can help build our passion for life. And to be resilient, to me, is not about being just an extrovert and to, what you say, gregarious? Although that's not a character flaw, I hope.
No, it's good.
But it's about building our own passion, and whether that's a quiet, humble passion on the inside that nobody but you knows about, fair enough, or it's like my sweetie in the multi-billion-dollar corporation and taking the task on how they treated seniors, finding out that maybe they should have listened to the really quiet lady who used to come down and say, you know, you have a problem here. You know you have a problem here. You know, you're not listening. Oh, I guess the media is coming today and you're going to be interviewed. What's that? You don't want to be interviewed because you've risked people's lives for 6 days in a heat wave? So take a look at your vision of you. Remember we talked about self-definition earlier, a picture of you in the dictionary? Well, it ties in. What purpose have you defined yourself as having? And how does that help you build your passion? I have a friend who owns a franchise, a coffee pub is what they call it. Seats, I'm going to guess 110 people, 120 people. And he said, my biggest problem is people don't understand rules in the workplace. Now, I know if you're in HR, you probably know this as well as I do, or much more. But he said, oh, if people not show up for a week and come back and wonder why they don't have a job anymore. He said, I just don't get it. Fishing season, hunting season. He said, they just disappear. I just don't understand. They like to get paid. I like them to work. It sounded like a good deal. These aren't stupid people. These are people with a fair amount of education, full-time and part-time, but some of them just don't get it. So take a look at, in a society that talks about rights a lot, how as we, at a personal level, how can we define our rights and roles and responsibilities? Because I think it's really important that we talk about our rights as well. We have the right to clean air and clean water. But we also have responsibilities. So to be resilient at a personal level, we have to define that in our communities. We have to define that in the workplace. So if you could.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's my relationship. I have several nieces under the age of 15, and the ones under 10, when they were little, when I first got this done, were quite impressed that I actually knew him. I'm not going to tell him that he's actually a character actor. But so for the under 7 set, I had a lot of relationship currency. That went out in the Christmas card one year. Which one needs a shave, I think was the tagline. And so take a look at, as we go through this, to be resilient, if self-leadership is your intrapersonal skill set, relationship currency is your interpersonal skill set. How do you deal with one-on-ones? How do you deal with one-on-hundreds? Your social, your community, your workplace. Because to be resilient, we have to do this together, not just alone. So if you could, please, Terry. So I go out of my way to have silly pictures taken because for a certain segment of the people I deal with youth at risk and some public school. It's really important, depending on the age group. This works with JKers. Somewhere after grade 1, it's not cool. But I figured you'd get a chuckle out of it. But it's who do you know and how do you know them and what can you do for each other? So it's just not networking for the sake of, hey, I know another person. My niece with her Facebook collection of, Uncle Mike, I have 90 friends. Would these 90 people feed you for a week? Would they let you sleep on their couch for a month? Would they lend you their car for a week to go to a job interview? Oh, because a real friend would probably do all that and a whole lot more. Would they all lend you $1,000? Oh, I'm not sure. Well, you have different labels for friends than me, and that's okay.
Be careful, they have a lot of Facebook friends.
Yeah, well. So if you could.
Okay.
So I want you to examine your relationship currency because highly resilient individuals have personal, career, social, community, and volunteer currency. So some things for you to consider. We live in a world that confuses style over substance. So to be resilient sometimes means we're going to do what's not popular. So if we're going to practice our relationship currency, it's good again to go back to what do you know about you? What do you know about others? In the hiring profiles you do about people as they show up. Tells you some things about them, but doesn't tell you what their values are. There's tests for that, but it doesn't mean that a smart one couldn't fudge it. So to be resilient, how do you deal with others? One of the biggest lessons I was given years ago by one of my mentors when I was in my 20s was, Michael, keep a list of the people you meet that impress you in a positive, outstanding way. Years later, that advice paid large dividends. Somebody in the family I dearly loved got ill. I picked up the phone. I said to the voicemail at the other end, if your family member had one of those great big long medical conditions, this condition, let me spell it, I can't pronounce it, what medical expert would you recommend they see? Got a phone call back and voicemail the next day because I was out of the office. Oh, Michael, I would go to this hospital and they'll stay after work to see you and the family member. And it was done. Took 6 months off the waiting. I didn't do it for that. I just want to know who was the best. Not only found out who the best was, but I got 6 months cut off the wait, which was pretty amazing. Who knew that treating people with respect and dignity could do so much? So your relationship currency, how you look, your culture, your attitude, that's all a piece. But also your personality style, how you choose to use that. We talked about the difference between, we didn't use the words, we talked about gregarious and quiet and shy, but introvert, extrovert, both are valuable. It's just that if you're introverted, you're living in an extroverted culture, you have to understand that it takes a certain amount of push on your part to make sure you get noticed. I worked with a gentleman in career coaching who showed up one day, and I mentioned him earlier, who said, you know, in the last 6 months I got told I was the best in Canada by all these criteria. They just outsourced and I got laid off. I got a spouse, I got 2 daughters. I'm angry. I said, congratulations, you have the courage to acknowledge you're angry. What else are you? I'm hurt. Congratulations. He said, you're kind of strange. I said, no. If you're going to be resilient, you got to acknowledge where you're at first. If you're stuck, it's hard to get unstuck unless you acknowledge you're stuck. So let's take the anger, which is energy, and how can we make it positive for the job search? So I'm pleased to say that less than a year later, he was making $20,000 a year more after he completed some schooling. So it was very exciting to see him take what he knew about himself, acknowledge it, say, okay, what do I want to do about it now? How am I going to use that to get going? So, well, the anger can either keep you in bed because you get depressed or bounce you out of bed so you can go back and maybe visit when you get the new job and you're doing really well. Not to rub it in, just say, it's too bad you guys didn't do it this way instead of this way. You know, I mean, I really wanted to stay on the team. or whatever style works for you. So at a personal level, at a career level, our resiliency currency, this is where the emotional intelligence fits in as well, because the topics overlap. This is where we have to use, and one of my favorites is the polite discontent. Highly resilient people are polite, but practice polite discontent where they say, you know, I agree with you here. I think it's wrong here because, so they're respectful, but they'll tell you the truth. One of my friends said, you know, you should come and work at my company because we have an elephant that sits in every meeting that we won't talk about. I said, what? It's an invisible elephant that sits in the room. We got a big problem corporately, but nobody will talk about it. We keep pretending it doesn't exist. But we know one day it's going to hurt us. We're going to go broke because of it. We're going to lose customers because of it. So resilient people practice polite discontent in their communications. Resilient people practice what mental health experts, psychologists would call reframing. Half empty, half full. Resilient people acknowledge the half empty, but they look at the half full and say, how can we use this by looking at it from another perspective? How can we move forward with what we do have? So to be resilient and build and develop relationship currency by being resilient is about, in part, language use, in part behavior, and part strategy. So resilient people, as I alluded to earlier, they network, but they create alliances. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? Where do you do it? Here's what I do, where I do it, how I do it. Is there a fit? Yes or no? Not now, maybe later. Okay, let's stay connected. And I think that's why social networking is starting to build momentum and business networking, because people know that in many of us, we're living a transitory life. So to be resilient, it's up to us to have a plan in place, because the only thing we know for sure is there's not much for sure anymore. Like I said, I worked for that giant corporation for 10 years, great people, but they kept saying mainframes, mainframes, mainframes. Well, they didn't listen and pay attention to Bill Gates and Stephen Jobs when they came along. And 7 years later, 9 years later, suddenly they had 3 competitors that collectively were the same size as them. It took them 75 years to get to the size they were. Less than 10 years later, they had 3 competitors that were collectively bigger than they were. And lower production costs because they did everything overseas. You could send somebody with a pouch of electronic tapes or discs, get it printed and produced in the Orient, get it shipped back, and do it a whole lot cheaper than getting it produced in North America. So resilient people practice polite discontent. They practice reframing. And they have some fun with it. So the model I showed you earlier. We're going to come back to it in a minute or two. So personal, career, social, community, volunteer. For those in career transition, it always intrigues me that if only 1 out of 3 Canadians ever volunteers in their life, that's not good or bad. Everybody's got their own comfort zones. But it's a great way to go out and find and be found. And so again, part of our relationship currency is who does what in your neighborhood? Who does what where you work, but in your work neighborhood? Because it intrigues me that some people go to work and they have no clue what happens next door or down the block. To be resilient is to have a little curiosity, because your next job could be next door, could be on the other side of the continent. So if you could move it forward, thank you. So 4 things. 4 things to do to be highly resilient as an individual or an organization or as a professional. Recruiting. Finding healthy relationships. These aren't all best friends. These aren't all even best acquaintances. Just that, does everybody have enough high-level professionals in your life? Everybody's got a great tax lawyer. Everybody's got a great mortgage broker. Hear where I'm going? Those are the experts. So we recruit them. But we also need friends and business acquaintances. So who do you recruit? Developing, building healthy relationships. Goes back to, what's your style? No use having 12 people in your life just like you. That's nice, but not as very useful. You're already you. You don't need 12 more you. You need 12 more people that are totally different than you in different ways with different connections and different styles, different knowledge base. And to be resilient means we can do that. Building healthy relationships. That's where the rights, roles, and responsibilities come in. Attaching. Maintain healthy relationships. We're starting to, I don't know about you, but We're starting to have a disposable society. Somebody annoys you, they get flicked away, they get blocked, they get bounced, they get disconnected. It's a very interesting belief system I'm starting to see it play from a multitude of age groups too. So take a look at attaching. How do you attach? How do you match with others? And last and not least, helping others. How do you share with them? How do you move forward? Because I believe that, and that could be being a mentor, being a coach. I think it's really important in our professional lives at some point. And I know during the just got married, child rearing years that time is stretched. But at some point before that, and especially after that, I think it's really important for our self-development and our career development that through helping others, volunteering, coaching, mentoring, or doing a special program, that it helps us stretch, helps us be more resilient. I have an acquaintance who is in charge of a fundraising campaign for 1 week a year for a major charity. So she has 2 meetings in February, 2 meetings in March. She takes a week's holiday in April, so it's the Cancer Society, and she said, that building, I own it. Not literally, but in terms of volunteering in April, it's mine every year. Every year I want to set a record. February and March, I get all my volunteers organized, do some calls, but that's less than a day's work. I do all my volunteering for the most part in April because I'm doing 60-hour work weeks plus every week. I don't have time. I come home exhausted and worn out. Saturday, Sunday's rejuvenation. But for 1 week a year, they own me for 90 hours in that week. That's what she does. But she said, wow, I meet some great people that way. So for somebody that considers himself to be too busy as an executive, she's got to the point where she gets 5 weeks holidays. She said, I can afford to do 1 week as a charity. So take a look. From her to be resilient, for her it's about giving back in a very narrow, focused, tight timeline. So relationship currency, recruiting, developing, attaching, and helping others. Now what isn't up there is, what are the 3 types of people we should have in our lives? Research on resiliency said that we should have A, key supporters, non-judgmental. They're polite, they're respectful, they're joyful. Maybe like that auntie I alluded to earlier. Doesn't judge you unless you really step over the line. Just show up and the food's there, the tea's there, the coffee's poured, whatever. We need key support people in a world of intensity that we've got where we do more phoning and emailing and less face-to-face. It's about nurturing ourselves. So key supporters. We also need clarifiers or change agents. And a clarifier and a change agent says, you want to get where in your career? Or you want to solve what in your life? What's your next step? Who are you going to talk to? What do you need to get done? So these are people that sometimes hanging out with them, you come away going, wow, that was good, but ooh, that hurt a little. Because they'll gently tell us that we're not being safe or we're not pushing hard enough. So to be resilient, we have to find some of those people. It's nice to have good time friends, but we also need some friends that will tell us the truth and gently push us forward. So clarifiers and change agents, key supporters, and I alluded to it earlier, but experts. I have a friend that's lived in Toronto for 9 years, and suddenly they needed a dentist. It's like, how can you live here for 9 years and not have a dentist? And of course, they left it till it was, I think I need a dentist. Small example, but it's like waiting until you have an accident to find out you need a lawyer. Well, then you got to get the one you can find in a hurry, and it's not the best time to find them, where if you ask around and line a couple up before you need them, it's work you didn't want to do, but it's a whole lot easier. So take a look at relationship currency. Change agents, key supporters, and experts. And if you could, one of the things about being resilient is you have a sense of independence. The right to have safe boundaries between yourself and others. You have taken the time to know what is and what's not a healthy relationship. Separating from unhealthy ones. And distancing from people who don't show respect. Now, this might sound pretty basic. However, mental health is becoming, or is, the second biggest issue in most companies after payroll. So I've had several clients in the past have staff that have had serious issues in the workplace because people let these things slip for weeks and months. And suddenly, when people went way over the boundary, the SWAT team or other things had to happen. So I think it's really important as individuals and organizations that we have boundaries. Clear, laid out boundaries. So, sense of independence. Polite discontent, I mentioned earlier. And yes, please. So, if you could, Terry, more?
How many?
Thank you, that's it. Behavior, choices, and options. To be resilient means you know you have choices and options. You know you have outcomes and choices. And because of different race, color, creeds, cultures, we all have choices. And we all have favorites. I remember as a kid working at a gas station as northbound on the 400 highway series. So it was really interesting. As Toronto expanded and as the city grew, different types of families started coming up. It was like, wow. Some families were really quiet and kind of nervous. Some families, the doors opened and the music was thumping. And it was like, whoa. But in our careers, how are you comfortable with these? I was really lucky. I got taught avoidance and passivity because we got robbed by a motorcycle gang. And my natural thing is to stare you down. How dare you cross my line? No, I have 12 people I'm responsible for in the workplace today. There's 12 or 14 gang members. I guess I keep my head down, offer them the keys to the storeroom, and keep my mouth shut and keep the people safe. That's all that matters. So are you comfortable with these in what situations? So to be truly resilient means we have to be a little flexible with ourselves. My natural one is to be assertive. You want to rob me? Why, you big thug. Oh, there's 12 of them and there's one of me and I'm the biggest guy here today. No, I better keep my mouth shut and keep my head down. So take a look at, to be truly resilient is to be mentally and emotionally flexible in an emergency. When is avoidance appropriate? When is passive appropriate? When is assertive appropriate? Almost always. And on rare occasion, when is aggressive appropriate? And of course, I define assertive as I win, you win. We both win. We both go away going, that was good. And I think the only time to be aggressive is when it's a safety issue. And only when you've really thought it through. So think about, to be resilient, is how does this impact your career? I've had people come for career coaching saying, I want a raise. I said, what'd the boss say? I've never asked them. Oh, you've worked there how long? Well, why didn't you get a raise? Well, nobody got a raise. Well, is business down? No, business is good. Well, why don't you ask for a raise? So it sounds silly, but it's amazing. So take a look at your corporate culture. Which one of these does it invite? I've worked with some pretty bright people, and I've worked with some really unique people. Bright people are wonderful. Unique people, that's code. You can't sue me for calling you unique. So take a look at how do they impact your career. I want to talk about energy management. What gets us through the day and the week. Physical, emotional, rational. And some of the skills that the research says if we practice makes for a higher quality of life. So energy management, as I describe it, is based on self-awareness. You can raise your energy up a little or lower it down. We live in a world with more opportunities than ever before, more confusion, and more angst than many decades. So it's really important to be aware of how out there impacts us. I'm just reading the book on social intelligence and just how being with other people, he talks about attitudes are contagious. We hang around really negative people, it's bad for our health, physical and mental. Anybody got a relative on call blocking? Oh, lots of hands going up, okay. We can love them, we don't have to like them, because I'm always big on trying to help people, but after 30 years when they won't help themselves, it's kind of a waste of time and effort. So consider the following things. That the research says that people who are more resilient have the following attributes to manage themselves, manage their energy. That when confronted with issues, they see them as a challenge. So instead of being threatened, remember this resiliency model, being less than, it's okay to visit, lousy place to live. To be more resilient, we have to say, how can I accept my lot, but what will I need to do to master it? So to be resilient, according to this piece of research, they talk about being challenged as opposed to threatened. A commitment to self, that I will do my best at this. Whatever that is. Not sure what that is, but I will do my best to work through this. So, going back to intrapersonal skills and interpersonal, that's what resources do I have inside of me And what resources do I have in my family, my community, my organization that I can tap into? So commitment. Sense of control. People that do well in the long term and stay resilient through large long-term issues have an internal sense of control. So that locus of control you learned about, or you already knew but got a label for, highly resilient people work on it, nurture it, acknowledge it, accept it. Now I would really like you to share what you do to nurture yours, keep yours alive. And I'll share two of my favorite. A long time ago, I had a 7-year cancer battle. The doctor and the healthcare team said I had a unique sense of control that they had never seen before. And my mental health expert, that I respected but didn't like, said I was too happy for a guy that was that sick. And I wasn't being realistic about my illness. Well, he meant well, but I asked him not to come back because he didn't know much about me before he said that. So, to me, during a complete topsy-turvy time in my life, to keep a sense of control, I had theme music. Don't mess with my theme music, I'll tell you. I had uplifting, take over the world theme music. It's a little corny, but it worked for me. I also had theme music to acknowledge emotions, because one minute I wanted to be a tiger, lion, hear me roar, but the reality is, I have cancer, it's spread, how am I going to deal with adversity again? Oh yeah, balance. Be courageous, have a good cry. Be courageous, have a good cry. I was trying to stay balanced, so I had I had at least 2 theme songs. So that's one thing I did. Other thing I did, in my community, I reached out and said, life is in stress right now because here's my issue. Would you please just stay connected a little bit and tell me one nice thing that happened to you every week? Could you send me a note? Could you send me a note? Could you write me a letter? Send me a phone call? So it stopped me from focusing on my life and my pain. It was like, oh, so you had what happened at work? Cool, it happened. What at the card game? You went and saw what movie? Oh, you had a barbecue you went to. So music for me is a big thing, and staying connected. So does anybody have one thing you do that really helps? I'm looking for some sharing here. I know it's hot and it feels more like mid-July, high noon in the asphalt.
For me, it's music.
Music?
Oh, big time, yeah. In the car, especially.
In the car?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the guy that you see at the stoplight. I've stopped, but I might be singing. So I'm sorry, but if you drive with me, I might inflict just a little. But yeah, singing is an outlet for me. It both helps me calm me or raise me up.
Exercise?
Exercise? Okay. What type?
Walking, running.
Walking, running, okay. One of the things to realize about resiliency is that watch out that you don't buy into some preconceived notion of it. At your age, you should or shouldn't. So I bought rollerblades at 42, and a whole bunch of my friends went, oh, that's really dangerous at your age. Oh, geez, thanks.
I get that all the time.
I got enough safety gear to make you think I might be trying out for the militia. I'm not that good, and I only go on a sidewalk. Although I have rollerbladed at 2 in the morning because there's no cars, and it's fun with the flashing lights on my butt and my head and the little light on my helmet to go down the road and swoop. We'll keep it on the side roads, honest officer. So take a look at what do you do. Poetry is another one I'm big on. Reading. I think that reading, based on the research I've been coming up with, when you read, doesn't matter what you read, you have more sense of control than watching TV. I have a friend who's going through a big situation, and he reads extensively. He said, I can't watch TV. It's too in my head. I can't control my feelings. But if I read a murder mystery, I'm reading a murder mystery. I can close it, it's a book. But I watch my TV, and whoa, next thing you know, my heart's pumping. And he said, no good. So, yeah, take a look at reading. Now, one we haven't talked about, maybe because we're in a public building, but for some people, their faith, practicing their faith. One couple I met. Wine. Oh, somebody in one of these groups talked about red wine therapy last time, huh?
That's
It
me.
was you, okay.
Red wine therapy, yeah.
Okay, no driving afterwards though, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay, as long as there's no driving, or rollerblading in my case, yes, okay.
Yeah.
So one of the people that I talked to years ago talked about genealogy as a way that made him feel fortified. Now, I wouldn't have used that term, but one of the things that was a gift to me was my parents had said, your grandparents were remarkable because of the following attributes, and their genes are your genes. I said, well, were they a 34? No, that's not what they meant. So in my heritage, I had 4 very tough grandparents, immigrated to Canada. One of them left a very nice lifestyle behind because of the, how do we say it nicely? He didn't know his place. So he decided in Canada he didn't have to have a place. Just go work hard and you might get somewhere. So he changed here and so we could do other things as a family. So that was pretty amazing. So take a look at who's been in your background that's been spectacular in their own unique way. I had an uncle went and helped fought a war and came home and was a garbage man for 40 years. But I tell you, he was one upbeat, friendly garbage man, and he raised 3 great kids, and he was a good community guy. So when I think tenacious, I don't have to go past Uncle Frank. My parents are great role models too. So getting through tough times, music, wine therapy in moderation, our faith, what do our genes tell us? Great literature, or, as one lady said, oh, Michael, fast food for the mind, she said. I don't read great literature when I'm stressed. I read bubble gum and it feels good. I speed read a book in days, but just 90 minutes every day. It's just a little escape. And then when I open my eyes, reality's there. I confront and get through it, but I had a 90-minute vacation.
Comedy leading to laughter.
Comedy. Very appropriate that we had somebody come to the room and sell us comedy tickets. What's your sense of humor? It's not my sense of humor. But what is your sense of humor, and what do you do to make sure you use it? We live in a world of great sadness often. The news is painful, repeatedly. The hatred, the loathing, oh my gosh. So what do you do to top up? Not to deny the world, but to get some balance. I already acknowledge the world. I do enough volunteer work out there. I got to fortify me. What do you do to fortify you? So energy management is about managing and acknowledging your sense of control. So on the days where you're feeling you have less control, ask yourself, what have you been doing to stay balanced to build up your sense of control? So maybe it's exercise, maybe it's food. I hesitate to say diet because that reminds me that waistlines and wastelands are just a few letters apart. But what are you doing for food? How do you treat yourself? I'm not talking about 2,000 calories in one meal, just something special. I like my toasted almond honey carrots as my vegetable of choice. I only have to say it and I start to salivate. Pavlov's dog has nothing on me. But the honey's a calorie killer, but so once a month it doesn't kill me. So take a look at your sense of control. Anything to add that you do?
It may be weird, but I take a warm bath. That calms me down big time.
Oh, home spa.
Yeah, I like to do that. That's my favorite.
Yep. I had a lady call it bubble bath therapy.
Yeah.
She said, I come out all smelling girly-like, but I don't care. It's great. And she said, I have 90 minutes in the tub, and I dare you to come in and disturb me. It'll get ugly because that spa time's mine. Now, I know that if you're in that point in life where you have a little person that's between 0 and 7, alone time in a tub, other than midnight to 1 in the morning, you might never get it. And gagging your children in their bedrooms, illegal. So, energy management. Humans, we come from tribes. We still live in tribes in some ways. Who's your tribe? Is your family, your friends. Sometimes it's a professional organization where you get those 4 or 5 people in the association that are good. They become good friends. I'm still hanging out 6 to 8 times a year with a client from 1989. We only worked together 3 days.
Would Facebook be an extension of a tribe?
Facebook, yeah, a pretty loose tribe, but not loose in a moral way, just a pretty,
Yeah,
but
yeah, loose connection.
it's interesting that this lady that we've been talking about working together for like 5 years, and we have these meetings twice a year, and we're moving forward. It's a long-term project. Suddenly her auntie found me on Facebook, and her auntie's been hearing about me, so she wants to meet me, and it's like, why? Because she thinks we can do business with her company. It's like, maybe Facebook actually is going to turn into something. So take a look at your sense of connectiveness in your neighborhood, your work, your profession, your social life. Do you have a hobby? Different ways. I have a neighbor that is the fastest friend I've ever made. He moved in. Within 3 days, Brian and I were having coffee together at an exorbitant amount. Never found a cup of coffee I didn't love. And if one's good, two's better. If two's good, three's better. And somewhere between 2 and 4, my heart talks to me, so I try to stick to 1. But he's just friendly and gregarious and tells great stories. And it's just a nice place to go. As my wife would say, you going to Brian's? Yeah, okay. Oh, I'll enjoy my peace and quiet. Because opposites attract, and she's really quiet. So take a look at your sense of connectedness. Have a plan. Do it on purpose, not by default. It's really important. To stay long-term resilient, we have to be connected to others. The other thing about energy management is, do you know your body well enough that it talks to you on occasion? Do you know what your early warning stress signals are? I got one between the shoulder blades. It starts off about this big, a little tiny knot. And if I ignore it and don't do just a little stretching, stay hydrated, it grows, and it grows, and it grows, and then it grows. And the next thing you know, me and the chiropractor go steady for 3 sessions. Me and the massage therapist are there for 2 sessions, and I walk around going, oh, I left it too long. It's only happened 3 times in my life. But after the second time, I said, I think I better learn this hurts because it leads to headaches if I don't get on it. And they really hurt. So what is your early warning signals, and what do you do about it? Whether it's the bath, the warm bath, whether it's the shower, whether it's music, whether it's walking, exercise, whether it's a good movie. It's up to you, but again, to be resilient, we have to make sure we stay balanced to fit it in. So some thoughts from the experts. 7 skills to manage your energy. Mindfulness. As you sit here, it doesn't take much to be mindful of the fact that it's warm in the room. As you sit here, being mindful, that's outer. Inner, is the heat tiring you? Is the heat mellowing you out?
It's getting irritated.
Oh, the heat's making him irritated. Okay. Mindfulness is paying attention to what do you think, what do you feel, and how can you calm down? Mindfulness is calming down so that we can actually pay attention to how am I? You heard of the term being grounded? I truly believe if we practice mindfulness, just paying attention to our flow of thoughts, we'd all be better off and be better communicators. Next one's pretty basic. Don't forget to breathe. We get in a world where everything's on purpose. Demands are made. It's really important that we remember to breathe. It's the simplest one, and yet it's the one that can cause us the most grief. 5,000 years ago, maybe when we hunted for our food and the beasts were bigger than us on occasion, it was good to hide behind a rock or a tree and not breathe and stay still. But in a world where our body goes into fight and flight just because we watched a commercial on a new car, on another product, or we watched the news and we got all tense, breathing is about keeping balance, keeping effective. Reframing we talked about earlier, is it half empty or half full? Can we see it from a new position? Guided imagery. What movies, what images do you allow to play between your ears? What pictures do you allow to be there? How many of them uplift you and your skills and accomplishments? How many of them get in the way of whether you're any good at what you do and how you do it? So paying attention to the pictures you allow your mind to create. And just to make you think, approximately 1 out of 5 people don't have images in their mind clearly formed. They're not very visual on the movie screen. Some of us can pick it up and turn it around in our brain with our eyes closed. Don't need to see it after we've seen it once. Turn it end over end. Got our own CAD/CAM program built in. So imagery, disidentification. Do you, when confronted with an issue, have a problem, or does the problem dominate you? To be resilient, we need to learn that it's okay, but not nice to have a problem, but you have the problem does not have you. So you can have a workplace problem, a health problem. Not nice. But if you have the problem, then you're still being resilient. It's okay to have the problem own you on occasion for a minute or two. Just be wary of it, that it owns you and you stay there. In Circle of Excellence, creating states of mind for different things. So one of my circle of excellences is to be calm before I go to bed so I can actually fall asleep in less than 3 or 4 minutes. Because if I don't achieve that, sleep and getting to sleep can take a couple hours, and that's a waste of time and not good for my health. And after a while, late night television, I don't need to see any more infomercials. Another circle of excellence is traffic. High alert, but calm. So when the idiot passes me on the shoulder, because he's in a hurry, because there's 2 car lengths in front of me, you got to use that space, I can go, wow, sure good thing I don't drive like him too, or we'd have killed each other. As opposed to, oh, would I like to have a whack at him? So take a look at all the different states of mind that we create, knowingly or unknowingly. To be resilient, we do it on purpose. So do it on purpose. Now, the next piece I'd like to move into and just touch on briefly is accelerated learning. It's not part of the resiliency research, but I would suggest that at a personal, professional level, it's really important we pay attention to how do we learn. We talked about multiple intelligences, which you can look up, and I'll direct it to you when you send me your email. But take a look at how to be a resilient learner, just-in-time learning. I worked at an IT testing lab for a while, and they had a learner that made him nuts because he ruined their average. He would come in before he took a course and pay for the exam and take the exam. He failed every one. But he said, now, based on your criteria, I know where to study and what to ignore. I already know this part, so I don't have to do that. So you know what? In a 40-hour course, he would only have to study 28 to 30 hours often because he already knew the others through work. He said, why study the whole 40 hours? Waste of my time. It's worth $150 to save 12 hours of study time. So I thought he was probably one of the wisest learners I ever met because he said, I know it's $150 every time I take one of these 8 tests, but look at how much time I saved. That's a day and a half I can be a dad, a day and a half I can do extra work, a day and a half I can do a lot of things instead of study something I already know. Because I took the test and found out I knew that piece. So I found that a very interesting way to think because he was taking courses in a program he already did at work. But they want him to get accredited to do more work and not a problem. But I thought, what a wise learner. So resilient learners understand their learning abilities and methodologies because everybody learns in different ways. And that's why to learn which of the multiple intelligences are yours, it'll help you learn faster, help you understand your best ways. And also if you create learning teams, it helps the team learn more effectively and more efficiently because then you put your resources in the pieces that are yours. So, as you leave here tonight, explore and discover multiple intelligences. Download the little PDF file. Take the test. Which ones are your strengths? How and when will you start to use it? I'd suggest next week. How will knowing this help you? Well, how many have kids at home, teenagers in their life? Okay, we've got a few. Well, it's a good conversation to have with them. It's a good conversation to have with your parents if you're over the age of about 6, because it's about why are we different and yet the same. So I have a niece I'm very proud of, and she scored virtually, there's 10 columns, and you get points assigned to each one. You can't fail. But everybody's add up to 100. She got 100 for one column and zeros in the rest. But she has some rare gifts because of that in that one column. And the rest, she struggles in. And with tutors, she's in university, but she has to really work at it. But in one column, I dare you to keep up because she's got rare gifts. So take a look at your multiple intelligences. It makes for interesting conversations, and I think helps build rapport and respect. Because, boy, I tell you, when you see it, it's like, so that explains my high school experience. I got 4 of them that are way up here, and 3 of them that are, I scrape by. So it really does make a difference. So why resiliency? We gain a lot in the process. It takes time. We have to gain a sense of mastery over it. It comes with practice. So consider, as you leave tonight, what are your self-leadership skills? Some of the things we talked about is your level of awareness, sense of mastery. Where do you get your power from? We talked about vision and values, setting direction, hard goals, soft goals. Your relationship currency, your interpersonal skills at a personal level with friends or coworkers, at a team level, at a community level, at a social level, volunteer level. Because to be resilient, we need to work on those and develop them. We just touched on energy management. I think mindfulness would be the key skill there to work on. We'll get you an article on that as well. And then last but not least, accelerated learning and teaching techniques. All I know for sure is that things are getting faster and faster. Anybody excited that you're going to get a new version of Windows soon? Anybody? Anybody at all? In the 90s, many hands went up. But in the last 5-10 years, not many hands go up anymore. Not beating up on Windows, it's just that, you know, who cares? Everybody says it's just too much now, unless you're a gamer. I'm told they're going to like it. So take a look at your self-leadership skills, your vision and values, so your relationship currency. How will you use them? How will you develop them? We showed this earlier. As you leave here, what's your opportunities to gain more resiliency? How will it impact your career? How will it impact your income and your personal life? What do you need to accept? What do you want to master? And how will that help you stretch in your life to achieve more goals? Think of the young lady I coached for career who added $9,000 to her income over the course of a year because she finally looked in the mirror and said, I am worth that much. I do work this hard, as opposed to working under her income potential. It wasn't just a magic pill. She really was worth that much. She just went out and finally found a job she could earn it. So to be more resilient, we have to stretch. We have to be aware of when we're shrinking. And let me leave you with my favorite quote. In the midst of winter, I finally found there was in me an invincible summer. So to be resilient personally, to be resilient professionally, it's whether we shrink or we stretch. Do it on purpose. Do it by design, not by default. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your input. And soon we'll be out of the heat. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.